Hi, I'm Rin Hurst, and I'm the author of Riding on the Power of Others, A Horsewoman's Path to Unconditional Love. A few weeks ago, I posted a video on the topic of horses and veganism, explaining why it's not vegan to ride horses. There was a pretty large response to that video, and so I've decided to continue these videos, answering some of the questions that came out of it. And today I'm going to tackle the topic of why is horseback riding exploitation. We can get into all of the harm of riding horses, which I will in other videos, but the exploitation piece is the hardest one for me to talk about, and it's also the most important in my opinion. This is honey. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, at this stage in my life, it just seems blatantly obvious that riding horses is exploiting them. But I think the most difficult piece of this is that it really wasn't that long ago that I myself absolutely believed I had a right to climb on these animals and call that connection and relationship and love. And I really believed it. And for me at that time in my life, that was how I connected with these animals, and that's what we did together, and that just seemed really normal, and it was condoned and celebrated. And then I traveled a very esoteric path of horsemanship that led me to a new horse that was unconditioned previously and had never been trained to accept anyone as a rider. And I met him as an equal and met a horse for the first time, even though he was the 13th horse to join my herd. And suddenly I realized I didn't know much at all about horses, even though I was a successful trainer and had decades of experience and had a varied and very expansive experience, including the science of horses. Was a hoof care practitioner as well. So everything changed, and it wasn't easy for me to come to these conclusions. It ended up with me living in the desert with these horses for 2 years, completely off grid, trying to figure out who the hell I was and what did this mean and what was I going to do with my life, because I had created a career and an identity out of using them and exploiting them. And when it comes to exploitation, you've got to understand that the word means to use another or to benefit from another, and it isn't necessarily returned. And what I understand about my relationship to horses now is more of an unconditional nature. And the thing with horses and other animals is that they don't really have a choice whether or not to be in our lives. And so since we are placing them in our lives where we have complete control over their care and well-being, ultimately we have this fundamental responsibility to not take advantage of that. And so if I place you in my home to be under my care and start calling it love, it really should look like love rather than how am I going to get to be with you at the end of the day in ways that I want to be. And I understand that a lot of people really believe that their horse wants to be ridden and wants to be used, and I don't know how to address that other than to say, how many times would you say yes if you were placed in someone's care who was ultimately responsible for every aspect of your well-being, even when you didn't really want to from your own true nature? And so there's a responsibility of understanding that at the end of the day, if we are the ones controlling their lives, they only have so much freedom from which to speak. This is Velvet. So think about the other relationships in your life that you call love and connection and partnership and cooperation. And how many of those other relationships look like you creating a reward and punishment system to get others to do what you want them to do? But more importantly, how many of those other relationships look like you climbing on somebody's back and telling them where to go? And I know that it's deeply ingrained for us that that is normal for the human and horse dynamic. But if your horse truly wants to be ridden, if your horse truly wants that from you, then I beg you to remove all the equipment and see if that's still true. Because at the end of my career, I was a liberty trainer, which means that I could ride pretty much any horse that came into my space with no equipment whatsoever. And at the time, I really believed that that was a relationship and connection. And now looking back, I just know that it was subtle forms of manipulation and coercion and even allowing the horse to say no and convincing them that it really should be a yes, which to me is a really insidious way of controlling another, that isn't as blatantly obvious as maybe physical force, but just as dangerous, especially for society as a whole. So some of these things to consider. And the thing to also remember is when you see someone with a horse where it looks like this beautiful connection and relationship, you don't always see the whole picture. You see the result, and the result can very much look like some of these things that I consider to be more real and authentic. But it's how you get there that matters. Because the truth is you can actually achieve amazing cooperation and relationship and friendship with a horse without any sort of control, and absolutely without having to climb on their backs. My career led me down an esoteric path of horsemanship to find Nevzorov Haute Ecole, which is an online school out of Russia, where the horse always has the ability to say no, and you always have to honor it. And I have a horse here that I took through that school that would absolutely say yes every single time if I asked if I could get on his back. But I don't need to get on his back because I didn't bring him into my life to use him. And actually I did, but I no longer want to use him. And I don't need him to carry me around for me to feel good. And the truth is that there's no benefit to a horse to carry us around, and there's great risks to it. Fortunately, my experience and background had a very deep understanding of horse science and their biology, and so I do understand the basic harms that are caused to the horse from a human climbing on their back and sitting on their back. And I'll get into some of that in some of these future videos. But that's not as important to me as using somebody I love for some personal need. There are so many other ways to spend time with horses, to make sure their physical needs are met, because honestly, you can't exercise a horse enough to counteract the damage you're causing by being on them. But there are ways to do that, no matter what your situation. Even if your horse is being boarded in a really small paddock area, there are so many better ways to take care of their exercise needs, of their emotional needs, all their needs. And I'm going to explore some of those with you and give you an idea of where to find that information and how to follow this path yourself if you're interested. And so if you're interested in any of the things that I'm saying, or if they resonate with you at all, I really encourage you to read my story. It explains it from start to finish, from traditional Texas kid wrangler working on a cattle ranch, moving up through the ranks of horse trainer and becoming a successful natural horsemanship trainer, to finding this path of love and relationship where I no longer need to use anybody to feel the connection that we're all so desperately seeking. And the book looks like this. You can find it on Amazon.com. You can order it through vegan publishers or request it anywhere books are sold. And this led me to start developing sanctuary here in Southern Oregon called the New World Sanctuary Foundation. Our primary responsibility here is to help people restore the connection through unconditional love and action that everyone seems to be lacking in this world that's gone a little bit mad. And not the connection that we can only feel when we straddle a horse, but the one that never leaves you, the one that changes lives. So if you'd like, check us out on the internet. It's newworldsanctuary.org. We are a 501c3 and we could sure use some support. 100% of the donations go to take care of the animals. No human benefits financially from any of the donated money that comes through here, and nobody's making a paycheck. This is about taking responsibility for the way things used to be and creating a new world, and we could sure use your help. So thanks so much for listening. I'll keep these coming as long as they're interest, and if you have a question you'd like answered about horses or veganism or any of these topics I've brought up, please just send me a message and I will do my best to respond as thoughtfully as I can. Thanks.